John adjusted his cap. New job, new start. He gripped his thermos, feeling the warmth seep through his fingers. It was a small comfort in the vast emptiness of the lobby. Coffee was his friend tonight. The rich aroma filled the air, a stark contrast to the musty scent of the old building. He took a deep breath, savoring the moment. The lobby was dark, lit only by the moon outside. Its silvery light cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the place feel even more deserted. The silence was almost deafening. John walked towards his station, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. Each step seemed louder than the last, a reminder of his solitude. He tried to shake off the unease. The chair creaked as he sat down. He was alone. The sound was a harsh reminder of the building's age and abandonment. He glanced around, half expecting to see someone, anyone. John was the new night security guard at the Blackwood building. It was his first night, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on him. He had heard stories about this place. It was a hulking structure, abandoned years ago. The company went bankrupt, leaving behind a skeleton of its former glory. The once bustling offices were now silent, filled with memories of better days. No one talked about why, not anymore. The reasons were lost to time, buried under layers of dust and neglect. But the building still stood, a testament to its past. The air hung heavy and still. John shivered. It wasn't the cold. There was something else, something intangible that made his skin crawl. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He felt a presence, watching him. He shook his head. Just nerves, he told himself. But the feeling persisted, gnawing at the edges of his mind. He tried to focus on his duties. He took a swig of coffee. The clock ticked. His shift had begun. The hours stretched ahead of him, long and uncertain. He settled in, ready to face whatever the night might bring. The building creaked and groaned as if it were alive, whispering secrets to those who dared to listen. John steeled himself, determined to make it through the night. The hours crawled by. John made his rounds. Each floor was the same, desks covered in dust, phones silent. He imagined the people who worked here, laughing, talking, living. He returned to his station. He tried to read, couldn't concentrate. The silence was unnerving. It wasn't empty. It was filled with something else, something he couldn't place. A floorboard creaked above him. John froze. He listened. Silence again. He chuckled to himself. Getting to me, he muttered. He had to relax. It was just an old building. Later, during another round, John heard it again. A whisper. Faint, but there. He stopped, holding his breath. It came again. He strained to make out the words. He walked towards the sound. It seemed to be coming from a room at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. John took a deep breath and pushed it open. The room was empty. Files were scattered on the floor. An overturned chair lay in the corner, but there was no one there. John shivered. He could have sworn he heard someone crying. Back at his station, John felt uneasy. He checked the security cameras. They were old and grainy, but they worked. He flicked through different floors, empty hallways, deserted offices. Then he saw it. On camera 4, a fleeting shadow. It moved across the screen too quickly to make out. John rewound the tape and played it back. There it was again, a dark figure, darting across the hallway. He checked the other cameras. More shadows, moving quickly, always at the edge of the light. John's heart pounded. He was no longer alone in the Blackwood building. Section 5, the investigation begins. I had to know more. I started researching. I found old newspaper articles about the Blackwood building. There'd been an accident, a fire, many employees died. The company never recovered. I dug deeper, finding online forums, whispers of hauntings. People claimed the building was cursed. They said the fire was no accident. It was arson, covered up by the company. I started connecting the dots. The strange noises, the shadows on the cameras, the stories of trapped souls. Was I dealing with something supernatural? I didn't believe in ghosts, but something was definitely wrong. I found a name in the articles, Detective Miller. He was the lead investigator on the fire. I tracked him down, found him living a quiet life, retired. I visited the old detective, showed him the security footage.
That building, it was a tragedy, but the case went cold, never found the arsonist. There were rumors of safety violations, cut corners. The company was more concerned with profits than their employees. They got away with it. Some things you can't escape.
That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the shadows, hearing the whispers. I imagined the terror of the fire, the screams, the heat, the desperation. I went back to the building. I had to see for myself. I walked the halls, picturing the chaos. I could almost smell the smoke, feel the flames licking at my heels. I reached the floor where the fire had started. The air grew heavy. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing, but I could feel it. A presence watching me, filled with anger and pain.
John felt a surge of empathy. He had to help them. He had to expose the truth about the fire, bring the guilty to justice. Only then could these tormented souls find peace. But how? The company was gone. The evidence destroyed. He had to find something, anything to prove what happened that night. He owed it to them. He owed it to the victims. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. John spent every free moment researching, following leads that seemed to grow colder with each passing day. He was relentless, driven by a need for justice that consumed him. He found old blueprints, hidden records buried deep within the archives of the city. These documents were covered in dust, forgotten by time, but they held the key to the truth. He pieced together the truth, one fragment at a time. Each clue brought him closer to uncovering the dark secrets that had been hidden for so long. The company had ignored safety regulations, cut corners at every opportunity. The building, once a symbol of progress, now stood as a monument to negligence and greed. They knew about the fire hazards but did nothing. The fire safety equipment was outdated, neglected, a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. He took his findings to the authorities, hoping they would see the truth as clearly as he did. But at first they were skeptical, dismissing his claims as the ramblings of a desperate man. The police officer he met with was particularly doubtful, questioning the validity of the documents and John's motives. But John persisted, presenting his evidence with unwavering determination. The evidence was overwhelming, the case was reopened, and the courtroom buzzed with the revelation of the truth. The once dismissed documents now painted a clear picture of corruption and negligence. The truth was finally revealed in a dramatic courtroom scene. The company executives who had long evaded justice were now exposed for their crimes. The company executives, long gone, were now wanted criminals. Their faces plastered on wanted posters, a stark reminder of the justice that had eluded them for so long. But would it be enough? The question lingered in the air, heavy with uncertainty. The damage had been done, and the scars ran deep. Would it appease the spirits trapped within the Blackwood building? John wasn't sure. The building was haunted, not just by the memories of the past, but by the restless spirits of those who had perished. He could still feel their presence, their anger palpable. The air was thick with their rage, a constant reminder of the injustice they had suffered. John knew that his quest for retribution was far from over. One night, John felt a shift in the air. The whispers were louder, angrier. He knew they were coming for him. He wasn't afraid. He had done what he could. He had given them a voice. The shadows converged, forming figures, their faces contorted with rage. They surrounded him, their icy fingers reaching for him. John closed his eyes, accepting his fate. But then, something unexpected happened. A wave of peace washed over him. He opened his eyes. The figures were bathed in a soft light, their expressions softened, their anger fading. One by one, the figures faded, their ethereal forms dissolving into the shadows. It was as if the very fabric of the night was reclaiming them, pulling them back into the void from which they had come. Each soul, once tormented and restless, now found solace in the embrace of the darkness, their souls finally free. John watched as the last one disappeared, a faint smile playing on his lips. He had been through so much to reach this point, battling not just the spirits but his own inner demons. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with moments of doubt and fear. A sense of peace settling over the building for the first time in decades. The once oppressive atmosphere that had clung to the walls like a shroud was now lifted. The Blackwood building, which had been a place of sorrow and despair, was now a sanctuary of tranquility. The air was no longer heavy but light. It was as if a great weight had been lifted, not just from the building but from John's own shoulders. He could feel the difference in every breath he took, the air now crisp and clean, free from the taint of the past. He knew then that he had done what he set out to do. The mission that had seemed impossible at times was now complete. He had faced the unknown and emerged victorious, not just for himself but for the souls he had helped. He had helped them find peace. Each spirit he encountered had a story, a reason for their unrest. John had listened, understood, and guided them towards the light. It was a task that required immense empathy and courage, qualities he discovered within himself along the way. He had given them justice, and in doing so, he had also found a sense of justice for himself. The wrongs of the past, both his and theirs, had been righted. It was a cathartic experience, one that left him feeling lighter, more at peace with his own past. He had faced his own fears and emerged stronger. The darkness that once loomed large in his life was now a distant memory. He had confronted it head-on and had come out the other side, not unscathed, but stronger and wiser. John left the Blackwood building that night a changed man. The experiences he had gone through had transformed him in ways he couldn't have imagined. He was no longer the same person who had walked in, burdened by the weight of his own fears and insecurities. He carried the weight of their story, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Each soul he had helped was a reminder of the strength it takes to overcome adversity, to find peace in the midst of chaos. A reminder that even in darkness, there is always a glimmer of light. The journey had taught him that no matter how bleak things may seem, there is always hope for redemption. There is always hope for redemption. The Blackwood building stood as a symbol of that hope, a beacon in the darkness, reminding all who saw it that peace and justice are always within reach, no matter how far away they may seem.